I think the power of story really connects us as humans. Storytelling's been a part of human history for ever and ever and ever since humans began. So when we hear a story that resonates with our own story, it gives us a really unique insight into ourselves. That story shows ourselves to ourselves, if you like. And then from that, lots of things can happen. Healing can happen. You can discover you're not alone in what you've been experiencing. You can integrate parts of your story that maybe you weren't able to previously by hearing somebody else's story. So yeah, I think the sharing of stories is a powerful way to just be human. I also learnt about my parents' story, which helped me learn about my own story, because suddenly I saw my parents as people outside of them being my parents, and that totally changed my relationship to them. And the same for my Nana. And what struck me about the stories were that the things that happened in all of their lives, like everything leading up to this point right now where we are, there's just been a whole history behind it, the world's history, and that just kind of blows my mind. Through paying attention to the story of your own life, you can start to, as you journey along, you can start to see that story unfold in ways that, the shape and the context of the story changes as you grow and develop as a person in life. And the older you get and the more perspective and learning and wisdom you get, when you apply that to the story that came before, it changes that story. And it gives you such a unique opportunity to value where you've come from. Stories connect us in a very powerful and personal way. I actually think anxiety's been a part of my life since before I was born. My mum's a very anxious person, and we know that, just physiologically, the stress hormones that are racing around in somebody's body while they're carrying a baby, well, not only while they're carrying a baby, but that's transferred to an unborn child. So there's this hypersensitivity that sort of is there from the very beginning. I was born into a fairly volatile household, and I have this very sensitive nature. So I guess I've always felt very unsure about the world around me and my relationship to it, and so anxiety's had a very strong hold on me from as early as I can remember. It's kind of ruled my life, I suppose. It's been, I feel like I've been held captive by it for a long time. I guess anxiety has always had me feeling very timid, like I'm small, and I am small, but like, it's made me feel like I can't do the things that I want to do. It's made me feel like I'm not in charge of my own life, that some other force is in charge of my life. It overwhelms me. It makes me shake. When I think of doing something that I'm scared of doing, I just get this kind of overwhelming fear come over me, and yeah, every part of me shakes, and I can't think straight, and I can't articulate myself, and I can't, make good decisions. And yeah, like I remember a job interview that I went to. I really wanted this job, and I had so much anxiety that I just completely failed the interview because I couldn't collect my thoughts. I couldn't answer the questions. It just hijacks me. It hijacks me. It takes my brain and it does something with it, and I've got no access to it. That's what it feels like. I'd describe anxiety like an unwelcome friend that just won't go away. Yeah, and who keeps just sort of getting in the way of everything that you're trying to do. Anxiety, my unwelcome friend, had me thinking all sorts of terrible things about myself, like, no, you can't do that. Or, what do you think? What do you think? You're not going to be able to do that. You're too small, you're too weak, you're not enough, you don't know enough, you haven't been educated enough. Lots of negative stuff. Not finishing high school, not going to university, not having enough faith in myself to follow my dreams, talked me into staying stuck. Believing I was not worthy of happiness, that happiness was a foreign thing that was just totally out of my reach. Certainly with my kids, it's meant that I didn't cope well with being a parent. I would get overwhelmed, and just in life generally, I'd feel overwhelmed a lot. So I would, whenever situations would arise where there was some conflict or something I was unsure of, I just didn't cope with it. And I would often have meltdowns because I'd be so stressed about things. And then I would feel incredible shame and guilt after those meltdowns. It made me behave in ways that were damaging towards relationships. There's stuff that you do and say when you're under an incredible amount of stress that you can't take back, and that the recipients of some of the things that you do or say, they remember that stuff always. And so, yeah, it caused an incredible amount of damage to my relationships, and to my relationship with myself as well. When you can't find good things in yourself, you feel like you're always messing everything up. Like, that's a really hard way to live. I think anxiety's plans were to be in control of my life until the end. Yeah, I think anxiety was pretty comfortable with me not knowing my own strength and my own goodness. And it was just going to keep sucking all my goodness out of me until the end, kind of like a leech that just can't be satisfied. It's really big, I'm really small, and it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and I'm shrinking down to this tiny little nothing, this empty shell. Intellectually, with all my reading and some of the work that I've done, I just held on to the hope that things would change at some point. You know, if I put in enough hard work, that eventually things would change. Even though for many years I felt like I wasn't strong enough to do that work, I just really held on to that hope. And that I think was, it sustained me in some way. I've always wanted to do work that has real meaning to it. So I guess that's a hope that has really helped me to keep pushing forward with anxiety, to keep working on anxiety. My will to do work that is meaningful was a big part of why I sought help. Because if I can't function, I can't do the work I want to do. Yeah, I think my kids, you know, being a parent, you have a responsibility. You're actually responsible for the lives of other people. And so you have to show up for that on a daily basis. And, you know, often I probably wasn't in great shape to do that, but I was there. And so that, I think that really kept me going. I often wondered how things would have turned out if I didn't have children. Would I still be here? At my lowest point, anxiety was part of the story, but depression was the other part of the story. And just the sheer will to live, not just survive, but to actually live, to enjoy life, to smile, to be not completely consumed with my thoughts all the time, to be happy, to have some level of peace. You know, I wanted all those things so much, and I knew that at that point I either had to, you know, if I didn't strengthen the fight against anxiety, that I would just be surviving, and I couldn't keep doing that. Some of the other things that helped get me through the darkest time were meditation and energy healing. I had a death in my family, and I guess that showed me just how short life is, and it also showed me that every day that we wake up, we have an opportunity to choose how we want to live each day. And I was choosing to let anxiety live my life for me, so I decided to make a different choice. I think for many years, or decades even, I've known stuff in my head about myself, but I didn't feel it in my heart. Somewhere along the way there's been a shift, and that stuff that I've been hearing from other people about myself and trying to take on board has really, it's really gotten into the core of me, and so it's made me, it's created a space for me to grow a new sense of myself. The opportunity to do this narrative therapy and think about my story from a new perspective, and with that space, I think has also enabled me to, like I was saying very early on in the interview about the way that as you grow and the context you get around your life, as you look back and reflect, you can see your story in a different way, from a different perspective. You can see strengths in your story that you couldn't see before, because, you know, the anxiety was sort of the dominating feature. Now I think Um, Peace is the dominating feature, and so I'm able to really see that even though I've felt like anxiety's been in complete control of me all of these decades, that I've actually had quite a lot of say in my life, and that I've made some really huge strides on the healing journey. I think it's telling my story in a different way, and I think it's, you know, that idea of anxiety sitting outside of myself and being in some ways separate to me, instead of, you know, it always being something that's inside of me. That was very powerful. So that was a big change that I guess has really given me a new relationship with anxiety, a new way of seeing it, a new way of relating to it, and it's changed it in the context too that it's smaller. It's not so big. It's smaller out there. The other thing that's been really helpful is to really examine that relationship with anxiety, and when you are looking at anxiety as this unwanted friend that's hanging around, you can, you have a bit of distance. You can look at how you relate to it, and sort of almost without an attachment to it, you're able to be more objective, I suppose. So that's something new that I haven't, that's a way of looking at anxiety that I haven't experienced before. And I suppose meditation too has had a similar effect, in that it gives me a place of trust to go to. So when I get overwhelmed, I can go to that place. If I'm out in the outside world and there's anxiety really does creep in, I find just breathing is a really good way to just sort of try and come back into yourself. It doesn't always work for me, or it hasn't always worked in the past, but a lot of the time it does. But now I'm just finding that the anxiety is at such a lower, a reduced level that it's not, it's just not having the same impact that it's always had on me. Well, I think the first thing that was really fantastic about the narrative walk was that we were asked to, or invited to bring a problem to the walk, and my problem was anxiety, but we're invited to give it a name. And at the beginning of the walk, I was just thinking of it as anxiety, but then soon into the walk, I realised that anxiety was really a symptom of me being, a super sensitive person, and that super sensitivity was actually a gift and not something to dislike about myself, but to embrace about myself, and that the anxiety was showing me a certain aspect of that sensitivity, so that I didn't see myself as being weak, but it was a strength rather than a weakness. And in particular with the work that I do now, that sensitivity is really key to supporting the people that I support. It's my sensitive nature that's been so intertwined with anxiety. you know, because when you're really sensitive, you feel things really deeply, and that can cause you to feel anxious about stuff. So seeing that sensitive nature as a gift rather than a weakness, you know, before it was like anxiety and the sensitive nature was a combination that was bad. Now the sensitive nature part of myself I can see is a good thing for me, and it's just really been about acknowledging that, and then through acknowledging that, I don't have to feel so anxious that I'm so sensitive and that things affect me so much. I can see that as a quality in myself that's really just about being human and being really aware of the humanness of everybody else around me. And that's a huge benefit to me. So the more I focus on that, the anxiety is just sort of getting less, and it's just shifted it. I mean, it's like a pivot. It's not really taken the anxiety away. It's just allowed me a different relationship with it so that it doesn't have so much power that it had before. Well, I think for a long time I've often had that sensation in my body that when you're up high, you're elevated landscape-wise above, you know, and you've got a really good view, it's in some way, and I can't really say how it happens, but it just does. It's like you've got a bird's eye view of the landscape around you, but in that, because you're in relationship with the land around you, you've got a bird's eye view of yourself as well. And I think that's where this insight about it being a gift happened. It was like going to a different window, and that sensitive nature is just something that it's a tool I can use to develop other stuff in my life. And being sensitive to everything means that I've got an opportunity to really use nature, I don't like that word use, to really be more in relationship with nature and allow that soothing part of nature to really work for me. Yeah, so I think the narrative walk and having, you know, getting that sort of bird's eye view allowed me to see all of that. It's the metaphor, isn't it? You're literally taking a walk, you're climbing up the big hills, you're going down the easier bits. Like, it's very symbolic of the journey through life. And it just naturally makes you reflect on your journey through life, as well as the physical journey that you're taking right now, and the two happening at the same time, very synchronistically. It just expands everything. It expands everything. It expands your view of everything. It expands your understanding of everything, and that's where the integration happens. And I've been using that word a lot lately, integration, because I really feel like that's what's happened to me over this period of time. I've always had this story. Now I'm retelling it, but I'm also integrating the new story with the old story. And there's a beautiful sort of synergy happening within that process. And yeah, it's been quite kind of making my head explode a bit, and my heart too. Yeah, because it's been big, really big. Yeah, I think I've got a few words of wisdom. One is to hold on to hope. I think having hope that there's possibility for change is really so important. I can't even yeah, I just think you've got to hold on to hope, always hold on to hope. One of the people I used to work with in Canberra at the organisation I was telling you about, one of the volunteers I used to support, when I left, she gave me a storybook, a children's storybook called The Red Tree. And it's about this child who lives in a dark and confusing world, and it's overwhelming, but it's the story of hope. And I got it out and I read it recently. Holding on to that hope and seeing that there is possibility for change is a very, very powerful thing. And also holding on to any small insights you get about yourself and growing those as much as you can. To tell a new story about yourself to yourself is a very powerful tool that you can use, and if you can find new perspectives about things, about yourself, then you can develop. And it might not happen quickly, it could be a very slow process, but you can start to look at your story in a different way, and you can start to tell it to yourself in a different way. And then when you start telling it to yourself in a different way, you can start telling it to others in a different way. And that, I have experienced the power that's in that. Even when you're in relationship with other people, if you bring the parts of your story that feel really okay to you to the fore and let the other stuff go to the background, it's not that you're ignoring it or that you're not honouring it. It's that you're allowing this other stuff to come forth. And when you start to do that, that stuff that you really value and that you really want for the future it just takes on its own life. It starts to grow and you grow with it. And it's just this really kind of, I want to use the word magical, because that's what it feels like a bit, that it's quite a magical process that happens. And I'd say meditate. Even if that's, we think about meditation as just sitting and not thinking. Well, I just think that's almost impossible for most of us. So yeah, walking in nature, being in nature, anything that makes your heart sing, do that, and do it with complete focus. And that's meditation. Yeah, so do more of that. That's what I'd say.